Fellow Toastmasters and guests, this is the second in my series of speeches on American writers. Some of you were here for the first one several years ago. And so what I wanted to do now is to skip back from the 20th century to the 19th century and just give you a brief synopsis of what American writers helped to create present-day character, as well as character in those days. First of all, let's define America. In those days, in 1850, 1870, the West was about out as far as the Mississippi River. The East was obviously along the East Coast. In the middle was the heavily populated part of the United States. And so I want to just bring to you the three writers who touched on those particular areas. The Mississippi River was explored as a theme by none other than Mark Twain. He used the Mississippi River as an allegorical pathway to bring us insight. And he used Huckleberry Finn as his character. Huckleberry Finn was a young man. He was going to not go along with the way society wanted people, expected people to live. He was going to go his own way, create his own life. He got on that raft with Jim. They got on the Mississippi, and they traveled down the Mississippi over a period of time and had a series of adventures, and it created a character for Americans of individualism and do what you can. Ernest Hemingway said, Huckleberry Finn was the first American novel. Say what you will. The second American writer I want to bring to you from that period was Walt Whitman. Walt Whitman covered the expanse between the Mississippi and the Atlantic. He created an awareness of the land, of the particulars of the land that the American people lived on. He wrote a book called Leaves of Grass. It started out in 1855 at, what, 25 pages of poetry. And over the course of his lifetime, he expanded on that book, Leaves of Grass, until by the time that he quit writing in the 1890s, the book was 300-400 pages long. He was constantly expanding on the thinking and what he'd already done and in what needed to be done. So it was a sort of like a bush or a flower growing throughout his life and being re-examined and rewritten and re-expostulated. And people loved it. They loved his writing. He wrote in blank verse. Those of you that like poetry, you'll notice that a great deal of American poetry is now blank verse, which was just brand new to many people. But it's a wonderful way of you use the line of the poem to create its own music. So you don't need to rhyme with some line that was a 1, 2, 3, or 4 back. The line itself is music. And Walt Whitman was, in a sense, a musician with words. And finally, because our time is limited, Let's go to the East Coast. The coastline runs all the way down from Maine to Florida. Many Americans went out on that ocean to create their occupations and to challenge the water in their boats. And I want to talk to you for just a short time here about Herman Melville. He wrote a series of books, Typee, Billy Budd, and finally, Moby Dick. Moby Dick, many people say, is the greatest novel that was ever written in America. It creates the chance for a character, an American character, to go out and to have a battle with nature, a battle with a whale, a battle where the whale has already won part of the victory by biting off Ahab's leg. And so Ahab goes back out after him, and he takes the crew with him. The crew are innocents. They don't realize the extent of the battle that they're being carried out to. And Ahab is determined. Question of who is innocent and who is guilty. Ahab was, in a sense, evil for taking on nature so personally. But it was individualism that these three writers brought to American character. And it carries over into today. Our astronauts ready to go to the moon, ready to go to Mars. 1,800 people signed up for what turns out to be 12 positions. So thank you, Americans. I leave you on that note.